And now this other kid who appears to be completely innocent of doing no more than asking to have his seat is dead at age 17 with nothing but promise lying in front of him and in the arms of his own twin brother. There's an element to this that must be mentioned, and that is that the assailant was black and the victim was white. And one thing that's very obvious to all of us is if the races were reversed, you wouldn't just be hearing about this on this show and a handful of others. It would be blanketing the national airwaves coast to coast. But it's not, because honestly, white boys' lives don't matter.
This boy's father, who says, I already forgive him, which is to say, vengeance is mine, says the Lord, and I will repay. Their foot shall slide in due time. That is not to say that the boy should not be arrested, prosecuted, imprisoned for life at least, if not more. And, the very fact that that has not happened is part of how we got here in the first place. This question, how was this boy raised? Well, you're not allowed to ask that question. When specifically from the racial angle, which the establishment media will not speak about. They probably won't speak about the case because of the races of the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator and the victim. Yep. One has said that we cannot ask how we got to a place where 70% plus of black children in the United States are born out of wedlock. We're not allowed to ask that. That's politically incorrect. It's none of your business. Well, it is my business.
What's good, family? Today I want to discuss the Karmelo Anthony case and how the media's framing of the narrative can be extremely misleading. First of all, I want to be upfront with you. If you're one of those people who's looking for an unbiased opinion on this case, then you need to keep it moving. I'm extremely biased, just like the countless media heads and the conservative content creators are. The only difference between the white conservative, their coon apprentices, and myself is that I'm actually honest and don't pretend to be unbiased. So I'm just going to go in and talk about the incident itself, just in case we need to get up to speed on it. The young man's name is Karmelo Anthony. He's 17 years old. He's a student, and he was involved in a stabbing incident that occurred at his track meet. Now, the altercation started over some sort of seating arrangements of some sort, and Anthony allegedly stabbed Austin Metcalf once in the chest. Now, the pro-white media's portrayal of this incident is what I'm concerned about. Secondly, at the time of this recording, there is very little information out about this case, and no one knows any more than anyone else from what I understand, and I also don't see any true winners in the end in this case. So, I want to focus on the media framing. When you look at the way the conservative media outlets covered this story, it's clear that they're trying to shape a narrative in a certain way. They're focusing on the altercation over the seating, making it seem as if Anthony was the hardcore aggressor, promoting the idea that he's some sort of thug in a picture with a airsoft gun when the Metcalf teenagers are in photos with real guns, including AR-15s.
The first thing I'll say, and I am, of course, attorney Andrew Branca for the law of self-defense, where our expertise is use of force law, self-defense, defense of others, defense of property, and so well suited to this particular topic. The first thing I'll say is we don't really have good answers because we don't really have good facts yet in this case. The correct legal answer to a reasonable degree of legal certainty is a function of applying the law to the facts, the law of self-defense. Now, we know the law, and we'll step through that here with all of you, but we only have the vaguest sense of the facts so far. So, if you've come here for a predetermined legal conclusion on this lethal event, we don't have that for you because we don't have the facts. And until we have the facts, credible facts to apply, it's difficult to know what the right legal answer is here. Now, I did do a poll before we started. Let me pull those up so we can share those. I'll do the Twitter one first. Here we go. So I just talked about the case, describe what we'll be covering, and let's ask, what do you think actually happened here? First choice, first option is only Black Lives Matter. 3% of you picked that. I don't know who these 2 or 3% of you who always pick that first answer. Someday, I suppose, we'll meet in person and you can explain yourselves. The killing was self-defense. Even a smaller percentage chose that, less than 3%. And Austin Metcalf was murdered. 94%, by far the more popular choice. And we have much the same results on our YouTube poll, if anything, even more extreme. Only Black Lives Matter, again, 2%. Metcalf was murdered, 98%. Nobody picked self-defense. Naturally, there are parties who want to present Karmelo Anthony in as favorable a light as possible. This is an image of him going around social media. Nice, clean-cut young man. The kind of photos we've come to expect in these cases. But of course, there's another reality too. Here's a post that's going around, popular at the moment, and it purports to show Austin Metcalf here at the top and Karmelo Anthony at the bottom. And they're trying to say that because this bottom right photo had gone around, that's Karmelo Anthony on the left of the bottom right photo holding the AK-like weapon. I don't believe it's an actual AK. I think it's an airsoft gun. But obviously, it looks kind of gangsta, right? Not favorable. Certainly not like this image. Quite different. So someone posted this to say, hey, just because Marcella Anthony is holding what appears to be an AK and making funny hand gestures in that bottom right photo, don't use that to demonize him. Here's a photo of Austin Metcalf holding a gun too. Well, there's nothing wrong with anybody holding a gun, folks. I've been handling guns since I was 9 years old by myself. It's fine. But I would suggest these two pictures, top and bottom, are not the same. The top is people holding guns and they're on a hunt. They're shooting outdoors. A lawful purpose. The bottom right photo looks to me rather different. It communicates a different message to me, especially when Karmelo Anthony appears to be throwing gang signs. Are they well known for engaging in the lawful use of guns or for the unlawful use of guns? For violence and mayhem and murder? Metcalf. So based on the evidence we have before us today, again, changes in evidence lead to changes in legal analysis and changes in legal outcome. The answer changes as the facts change, obviously. But based on the evidence we have today, I don't see any viable path to an acquittal on the grounds of self-defense for this fatal stabbing of Austin Metcalf by Karmelo Anthony.
Yet they are portraying them as the boys next door, choir boys, while pushing the same old tired narrative about black males being violent thugs looking for trouble. But I already know what you white supremacists and coons are going to say. Why did he bring the knife in the first place? He was just a black thug looking for trouble. Notice how those same pro-white conservatives didn't have that same type of energy for Kyle Rittenhouse, who violated curfew, crossed over state lines to go in headfirst with an illegally purchased AR-15 via straw man purchase, yet he was constantly given cover. And no one from that side of the aisle was saying anything about him being a thug or looking for trouble.
Welcome back. Judge Bruce Schroeder has emerged as one of the most talked about figures in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. The 75-year-old has yelled at prosecutors, refused the word victim be attached to those who were shot by Kyle Rittenhouse, let his own phone ring repeatedly during court, and on Veterans Day applauded a defense witness who is a veteran.
Kyle Rittenhouse is now facing 5 counts instead of 6 after the judge interpreted Wisconsin's open carry law.
The move stunned prosecutors as the misdemeanor gun charge was taken away from the jury's consideration. CBS 2's Mugo Odigwe live in Kenosha to break down what has happened in the courtroom so far.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, count 6 was dropped. That is the count involving the possession of a dangerous weapon by someone under the age of 18. Remember, Rittenhouse was 17 last summer when he took a rifle with him to Kenosha during the Jacob Blake protest. Now, many legal experts, they believe that charge was going to be the easiest one for the prosecution to prove. But again, that charge has now been dropped. So
we have a 17-year-old kid from Illinois came over to Kenosha to help defend businesses from looters, rioters, and arsonists who were burning down everything. Antifa, BLM combined, he came over to help protect businesses. Constitutional right to stand up for your own property, personal property, and safety. People have that right in this country. Sometimes they forget that. But he went over there, and it doesn't appear, there's no information to lead you to believe that he had ill will or ill intent.
All of this coming from the same political party that rants and raves about stand your ground laws and personal defense. The problem is, bigoted whites and tap dancing coons don't believe that Black Americans have the right to stand our ground.
Why are you at a track meet with a knife in your hand?
Began with the suspect sitting under another team's tent as rain fell and being told to move. A witness told police Anthony immediately opened his bag and reached in, telling the victim, "Touch me and see what happens." When the victim pushed him, witnesses say Anthony pulled a knife from the bag and stabbed Austin Metcalf in the chest. The murder suspect reportedly asked police on the scene if what happened could be considered self-defense.
That kid who did this, his parents should be ashamed of themselves, because you raised a terrible child. You raised him like that. You put that kid in a situation where he thought violence and killing somebody was the solution to him being wrong.
Or even enjoy the protections of the Second Amendment. For example, the only time Ronald Reagan pushed against firearms in the Second Amendment was when it was the idea of Black men possessing firearms. White Christian conservatives were gleeful and supported that Kyle Rittenhouse had a Give, Send, Go fundraiser. I think that's an app. And that he received over $500,000 for his legal defense team. But when Karmelo Anthony hit over $50,000, white races and their melanated pets had a fit.
Now, again, Austin Metcalf obviously shouldn't have done that. It ended his life. It's unfortunate that he did, because this whole situation really didn't need to happen. But Karmelo Anthony goaded him into it with the intent on backing up his, touch me and see what happens kind of threat. So again, I don't see this as a clear-cut case of self-defense. I find this to be way more, it definitely crosses the line into, I would almost argue, premeditation of a crime. So from The Independent, it says, online fundraiser for suspect in Austin Metcalf stabbing raises over $60,000. Now, this was for a GoFundMe that was set up for Karmelo Anthony. But then you see that the GoFundMe has actually been shut down, which is crazy. I mean, good on GoFundMe for actually canceling this one, because I don't see a justifiable reason why this kid deserves a GoFundMe. However, he has now raised $160,000+ through Give, Send, Go. Now, what's important to point out is Give, Send, Go is supposed to be like an alternative to GoFundMe for those who have been disenfranchised by GoFundMe for various reasons, ideological, political, what have you. And here you have Give, Send, Go allowing this fundraiser to be going through, and it currently has $175,000. Sorry, my computer's freaking out, guys. Let's refresh this. $175,000 raised in donations for Karmelo Anthony. I'm just going to skip browser pages because this is terrible. And what's worse now is you have people online trying to compare his situation to Kyle Rittenhouse. Yes. This black Twitter account that says Jesus is king, but it's a black man with a crown of thorns. Very, very obviously a race hustler. Says Kyle Rittenhouse can be 17 with an AR-15. Karmelo Anthony can't be 17 with a knife. Make it make sense. This is the sense. Well, again, in their specific situations, one of them was attending a protest and was allowed to be armed. Legally allowed to be walking with a rifle, whether you like it or not. The other was a student that attended a track meet and pulled a knife out after one tiny bit of provocation and into the life of somebody else. We're not talking about the same things.
I'm also going to dismiss the claims that Karmelo was there to steal property, like I've seen in a lot of different comment sections. That's absolute nonsense. There's absolutely zero evidence of this, and it wasn't even in the arrest report. However, I have no problem with the claim that he didn't sit at his assigned seat, and because of the confrontation, there was a stabbing. But I'm also going to play public defender for the defendant, like the pro-white conservatives are playing public defender against Karmelo Anthony. But what about the context? If we can infer that Anthony sat in the wrong tent, we can also infer that he was trying to get out of the rain. We can also infer that he was approached by the deceased and that he was about to be jumped by the brothers. You got to understand, we're not the same black people from the 1960s that's going to take a hit or a punch and say thank you and pray about it to Jesus. But what if he felt his life was threatened?
The reason my client Jason fired his weapon that evening back in October 2014 is that He truly was in fear for his life as well as the lives of his fellow police officers.
When you see the video, it does not show any of the normal indications of threat that we've come to associate with deadly action by police. What do you see?
Testimony is underway in the trial of a Clearwater man who shot and killed an unarmed African-American man in a parking lot at a convenience store. Michael Draca is using Florida's Stand Your Ground law as his defense. Taking the stand today, the detective who interviewed Draca the day he shot Marquise McLaughlin. During his testimony, he showed video of the interrogation, which includes Draca reenacting the incident. Defense attorneys say Draca feared for his life after being shoved to the ground.
Okay, so right here, yeah, okay. Was he charging after you? 2 steps running, okay. Well, you're saying he was running? Well, it would have been running when he got out behind the car.
Yesterday, the jury watched surveillance video of the incident. In that video, prosecutors say it shows McLaughlin was turning away. The shooting happened last July in front of a convenience store in Clearwater and gained national attention after police initially decided not to charge Draca.
This in itself provides a strong argument for self-defense, especially since both Metcalf teams are larger than he is. Context, remember? Isn't that what they say on the behalf of the white criminals every day in America? We need to be open-minded and lean into reasonable doubt, not ravenous guilt. Because for them, suddenly we get the let's not be emotional here. And let's not rush to judgment and wait until all of the facts of the case come out. They say that when black people get shot and killed. But you don't ever give black suspects or defendants that same level of latitude. In your eyes, we're either guilty at fault or it was just a terrible isolated incident that was an accident, completely removing the agency of the white thug. But stick with me for a moment. The arrest report is extremely interesting because the police report isn't exactly evidence, and the report in itself is considered hearsay. But what isn't hearsay is the fact that Karmelo was questioned without his Miranda warnings. Nevertheless, the police report stated that he said something like, "I was protecting myself." If he was properly arrested and read his rights, that could have possibly triggered to the young brother to remain silent until he had proper legal representation. I think his attorney should immediately file for a motion to suppress his earlier statements on the grounds that his constitutional rights were violated because of the officer's failure to properly do his job. Unlike these anti-black conservative bozos, I won't pretend to know everything about this case, and I don't. I'm in the dark at this point, just like most of them are. But it would be an injustice for me to not point this out. You see, in America, many white people think that they own us. They see us as property or individuals to be policed by them, even if they are civilians themselves. That's why they are emboldened to deputize themselves to ask us probing questions about our comings and goings, while we're peacefully minding our own business. This is how we get the white people calling the police on us for barbecuing in a public park, questioning us for ID at our apartment building, calling on black girls selling bottled water, black boys cutting grass, black realtors conducting business, and black politicians trying to whip votes in their districts like the white politicians do every election cycle. They do this knowing full well in this racist justice system that there's a high probability that if a phone call is made to the police, that could result in an unjust arrest or the cop Xing us out on the spot. There is no reason why the deceased student shouldn't have called a teacher, reached out to a coach or a security guard of some sort, or on that whole entire seating situation. If it was so traumatic, he should have reached out to an authority figure, not take action on his own, not to police this young black man. To most of them, this is a game where they think they can just say jump and we say how high, to the point of instigation, harassment, and physical threats. These physical threats often reveal itself by playing Barney Fife and basically do what those 3 white racist hillbilly thugs did to Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. And these sick, deviant jokes regularly become disastrous. Only this time, it was one of them suffering from this dangerous game.
What started out as a joke has turned out to be a disaster.
The creed appears to be in very serious condition.
The man alive.
He dies.